This basketball, you see, is the game, is one of the two balls that were used in the Globetrotter game. Now, as I told you, Doherty threw it 1,000,000 miles up in the air when the gun went off, and you might wonder how I wound up with it. Well, that goes again back into later on, years later, as a matter of fact, when I was playing Major League Baseball. Keith Jackson, the great announcer, was the announcer of the Seattle University basketball games. And he called me between baseball seasons and said, would I like to be the color commentator with him on the Seattle U games? I said, I certainly would. So we put together what I would call a very modest contract, and we started doing the games. And at the first game, he said, all right, it's halftime. He said, oh, you take the interview with the interview. So I did it, and I was kind of proud of myself. So the next day, I called Keith down at Como, and I said, Keith, how did I do? And he quietly said, oh, I'm a word mechanic. He said, if I could think of a word below horrible, I'd use it. He said, now get your tail down here and I'll show you how we do this. Well, anyway, we kept doing this, and Ed was the athletic director at Seattle U. And so one night they were playing down at what is now not Key Arena, it used to be the stage of the Opera House. And Ed and I were going to have a beer with Keith after the game, so Keith and I finished the broadcast, and we did the wrap-up, and we're sitting in the stands waiting for Ed, and this guy came up with a paper bag, and he said, Brian, he said, you remember the Globetrotter game? I said, yeah. He said, remember when Doherty threw the ball in the air? I said, yeah. He said, I got the ball. And he said, I've had it all these years, and it's time you had it. And he gave me the ball. And that's how I wound up with the ball. Royal Brome found out about it when I was bumping my gums too much and wanted it for his museum. So I said, I'll loan it to you. So Royal Brome put the 84, 81. And when he first did it, he said, Johnny O'Brien, 42 points. And he said, what do you think of it? And I said, well, you already took 1 point away from me. So he had to redo the ball onto 43. So that's how that ball wound up in the family. And the other thing I'd like to say, and this is again, you remember Honey Russell turned us down at Seton Hall, 10 miles from our hometown. Well, 4 years later, we're in the Army, and we get an invitation to play with the College All-Stars against the Minneapolis Lakers in Chicago and the New York Knickerbockers in Madison Square Garden the following night. We accepted. The Army gave us an hour a week of our physical training to get in shape. We hadn't had a basketball in our hand in months. And they took our Army uniforms and tailor-fitted them. We were going to represent the Army. We were the best-dressed privates in the United States Army when we went to Chicago. And we got off the plane, went to the hotel, and guess who's the coach of the College All-Stars? Honey Russell. And so the guy at the desk said, Coach wants to see you guys upstairs when you show up, all the players. So we went up and we knocked on the door. And Russell said, come in. We opened the door and he said, you little bastards. He said, I've been getting my ass chewed off in New Jersey for 4 years on account of you too. And Ed quietly said, honey, we still have the telegram where you turned us down. And Honey said, burn it and you start both games. And that's how that happened. And Ed's going to conclude today's activities with something I know nothing of.
First, before I get to that, there's a little story with getting ready for to go to Chicago and New York to play that game. We're outside shooting baskets, just the two of us, because we had to do it on our recreation time. And these two guys come along and they said, you want to play us basketball? We's good. I said, well, we'll play you basketball. He said, now, remember, we's good. And he said, and if you want to play us, you just get the ball first because you're smaller than us. I said, okay. So we get the ball, and he says, we's going to play to 20.
20 baskets.
You get the ball back if you make it, 20 baskets wins. So we start the game. The first game ends up 20-0. We beat them. The second game ends up 20-0. We beat them. Third game ends up 20-0. So we played an hour and they haven't had a shot yet. So the guy says, well, we just got to go to the mess. And as they're walking away, the guy turned to the other one. He says, "Tastes good. Tastes good." What happened to my glasses?
On the table.
No, mine.
No, where am
Right
I?
there.
Oh, God bless it, they're too close.
Now we know why you need them.
We're going to do baseball tomorrow, a lot of it, but I want to read you a letter here. This letter was dated to me November 13th, 1952. So you can see how many years it is. I can get it out of here. One of the problems I'm having is my motor skills with my hands. Goes John. Dear Eddie, thank you so much for your very informative letter, and I have written to Mr. Rickey appraising him of the plans for the next 6 to 8 weeks. If you think of it, I wish you would have Fenton come or someone in the athletic department send a copy to the Eastern basketball schedule to Mr. Rickey at Forbes Field, Pittsburgh. He can then make plans to meet you on some occasion when you are in the area. It is my earnest hope that something suitable can be worked out to the mutual advantages of both you and the Pittsburgh club. Well, the Washington football team has come and gone after taking quite a shellacking at the Coliseum. I was surprised to see them get beat so badly. Heinrich had a real bad day passing. Most of his throws were intercepted, and a couple of the interceptions went for touchdowns. They visited us on the set with the day before the game, and maybe that had something to do with their ineptitude. They also visited the Bob Hope set where they had about 150 beautiful dancing girls, and they stayed there all afternoon. Unquestionably, this had a detrimental effect on their performance. Must have been very distracting to them to play football with the memory of all those little cuties still lingering in their head. There's a Titanic coming up on Saturday when USC meets UCLA. Unfortunately, I have to work, but we're getting a TV set put on the stage and we'll knock off a couple of hours and watch it via TV. This is just about as good as a way to watch a game as being there with 3 or 4 cameras and a big screen. I personally think if the Bruins can retain their fired-up enthusiasm that has characterized their performance all season, they may tip the Trojans over. Although the Trojans are a little tougher team defensively, the Bruins can rise to the great heights under the guy Red Sanders, who is a real inspiration type of coach. There is a possibility I will be up in Pullman, Washington, the week of December 7th to the 12th. They are conducting a short course up there for ranch owners and operators with lectures in school there, how it might be a good thing for me to attend about the theory of cattle business. This is problematical, though I still certainly will go. Should I go, I'll try to get by Seattle and see you boys. But actually, I think the next faction figures at his fingertips are Mr. Rickey's, and I have written him and told him to do the best he humanly can for you guys, as I feel a deep personal interest in your careers. Of course, there is the added incentive of the possibility of sampling Mr. Fenton's good cooking. The news about this just confirms my earlier belief that Mr. Fenton had a real sharp eye and covered all the bangles before he went to the altar. Give my very best to Johnny and to Fenton, and let me hear from you again if you have any questions in your mind about the situation. Stay in shape again, and hope you have a real big year on the court and establish scoring records all over the United States. Believe me to be, as ever, your friend, Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby was very instrumental in getting us to sign with Pittsburgh. So I had letters from him and correspondence, and I just wanted you to, we'll kick off baseball with a letter from Bing. Well, thanks, everybody.
As a prelude to that, I'll tell you how we met Ben. We were at Seattle, we had a whole bunch of wins, and then we had a weekend off, and Ed and I decided to pull one on Fenton. So we went up to his office and we said, we got the weekend off, but we're going to go skiing. And he almost had a heart attack. He said, you can't go skiing, you're going to get better. No, I said, not a problem. So come Monday morning, Ed and I went over to the nursing school And we knew this gal, and she'd take my leg from here down, all the bandages and the white deal, gave me a set of crutches. And we go back up to Fenton's office, and we go in, and I'm like this, and I said, you were right about that skiing, Fenton. And he damn near died. And got to the point we were almost afraid to tell him it was a joke. And 2 days later, he sends a call over to our room in Vets Hall that Bing Crosby wanted to meet us. And we said, here's Fenton getting back at us. And so Ed said, well, did you see the paper this morning? Bing got tossed out of that hotel in Vancouver, British Columbia, because they thought he was a bum with the fish hooks and the hat and all that. I said, okay, let's go over there. So we did, and there he was. And hi, I'm Bing Crosby and all of that. And he said something, and I said, tennis is my racket. And he said, kid, I got thrown out of your hometown 25 years ago trying to use that story. And that's how we first met Bing. Ed has letters from him, I have letters. When he first started writing to us, it was handwritten. Then later his handwriting went a bit, so they got typed at the end. But I have one handwritten at home where, and when he was married to Dixie, he was afraid of flying, and he never flew. But after he married Kathy, then he would fly there. So in this letter he says, I'm going to England on the Queen Mary, and I'm going to take Lindsay with me, because I think of all my kids, he's the only one with a remote chance of being a gentleman. so Bing always said the way it was. He occasionally would come in. Bob Hope owned a piece of the Cleveland Indians. Bing owned a piece of the Pirates, and Phil Harris chummed around with them. And on a couple occasions, they came into the locker room at Pittsburgh, the three of them, and they started telling stories. And 2 hours later, we weren't even out of uniform, just with our sides splitting. How funny the three of those guys could really be. So during our lifetime, we have met some very, very interesting people, have much more renown than Ed and I would ever have, and we're happy that sports was kind of the instrument that make it all happen. Goodbye for today.